Hello friends, this is Sam J, and today we will be talking about how to create subprocess in TIBCO Business Works. Friends, this is practical video, so I suggest one thing. Firstly, you completely listen this video, and in the second run, what do the practical along with me. So get set go. So let us see how to implement subprocesses in TIBCO Business Works 5.x. Straight away, I'm going into practical. So if you want to understand theory of subprocesses and all, then I request you to check my other videos. In this video, I'm not going to talk about theory, but straight away I'm getting into practical. So subprocess is implemented as service. Remember this thing in TIBCO Business Works 6.x. So every subprocess will be implemented as a service. So you will understand that how it is implemented as service. So what application we are going to develop in this video? So we will have one main process and we will have one addition subprocess. Main process will send two parameters to subprocess, two numbers to add. Then addition subprocess will do the addition and will return the result of addition to the main process. This is what we are going to see in this video. This is pretty simple, but it will give you clear understanding about the subprocesses. So get set go. Firstly, let us start Business Studio. So I am really explaining you from the scratch. So tune with this video till end. So it is starting. Depending on your RAM, this TIBCO Business Works Studio will take time to load the video. I do have 8 GB RAM, so still it is taking quite a while to get loaded. Let's wait. Okay, so let us start from scratch. Make sure that you are on the design perspective of Business Studio. So I am on the design perspective, and then let me create new Business Works application. So let me create a new Business Works application module. Let us give a name. Let us call it as demo sub 1. Fine. It will create some folder and all, that's fine. So it will create some dummy processes. So you can see that process will be created, main process will be created. That's okay for me. So all defaults accepted, finish. So it has created a new project. Now let's do one thing. Let us straight away create one subprocess in my project. So go to the processes folder and demo sub 1 package, and in the same package I can see that there is one process is created. So let's do one thing first. Let us delete this process. I don't need it really. Okay, let us create the subprocess now. So I'm creating a new subprocess. So you can see I go to this package and I say new Business Works subprocess. Let's create that. Let's give a name as addition. So process name is addition. Let it be public subprocess, no problem. It will be in the same package, perfect. And the service interface default, we are happy with that. Click finish. Okay, look at this. Here we will see some green icon. So that is indicating that this subprocess is implemented as service. So as I told you earlier, every subprocess is implemented as a service in TIBCO Business Works 6. Fine, that's okay. So by default, two activities are added into my subprocess. So first activity is receive activity, and the label of that activity is start. So it will be used to receive the parameters from the main process. And there is another activity which is added. It's a reply activity. it is used to return result to the main process. Okay, now our subprocess is created. Now we need to do some configuration to make it really as a subprocess. So remember, these three provisions we need to understand whenever we implement the subprocess. So first provision is parameters to subprocess. Let us make a provision so that subprocess will accept parameters from the main process. So how to do that provision? Let me go to the start activity or receive activity, and there let me define my parameters. So go to output editor tab, and here let us configure our parameters. So this one, let me call it as number 1, and let me save it, and I will make the data type as integer. It is by default string, so let us make it as integer. I save it. One more parameter I want to add, so let us add that one more time. So make sure you are here and you just say add the parameters, and now make it as integer and give the name as number 2. Save it. So this is what the provision to accept parameters from the main method. Now let us come to the another provision number 2, which is return the result from the subprocess. So how to do that provision? That provision we have to make in the end activity or reply activity of the subprocess. So here you will see the input editor. Now don't get confused with this name. If you go to the start activity, the tab name is output editor. So it is basically main process output is coming to the subprocess. So it is input to the subprocess. Don't get confused with this. This is exactly reverse. It is from main process perspective. Remember that. So on the end activity, it is input editor where we will configure the result. So here I will make it as result, and I'll make it as integer. So I changed the data type and made it as integer. So I made two provision. One is provision to send parameters and provision to return the result from the subprocess. Now the business logic, where we can add the business logic to add two numbers actually. So that you can add it. Here I go to the input tab, and there I need to define this some value over here. So what will be the value of result? It will be addition of number 1 and number 2. So let me do that. Parameters and number 1, and then plus number 2. So number 1 plus number 2, that got added, and the value is assigned to result, which is getting returned to the main process. So here we have completed these two provisions, and our subprocess is ready now with the business logic. Now we need to call that subprocess from the main process. So we can do one thing. There is one shortcut to create the main process. So right now we don't have main process created. So what we can do is that I just right click on this green area, and there I said business works process, and I say create calling process. So it will create a main process which is used to call this subprocess. So let us create that, and let me call it as main process. Let it be public, no problem. Finish. So main process got created, and what it contains is, it contains the activity, and this activity is the invoke activity, which is actually already configured with the operation. So you can see that operation which is there in the subprocess. So you can see this service calling is already configured in this. So it is calling a subprocess basically. So this invoke activity is actually calling a subprocess, and this service interface indicating that this main process is giving a call to the subprocess. That is an indication of that. It's a service invocation basically. It's a service invocation. And here we configure our subprocess. So let's see. Now let's have some starter activity here. So I take timer activity and I take end activity as well. I connect them together. And firstly, I need to pass two parameters from this. So input. So as of now I am hard coding this two parameter. Let's say 100 is first parameter and 200 is second parameter. So I saved, there is no error now. Now you can execute it and you can see that whether it is really calling the subprocess and in output we get a result in the main process or not. So let us execute that. So I debug that. So I'm just debugging my only one application, demo sub 1. I say apply and debug. So it got started and I can see that my job is getting created. I'm just checking in my main process. In my main process, and this is the invoke activity. Let us check the job data and you can see that in the job data output is coming as 300. Okay, so actually it gave a call to subprocess. You can see that subprocess got both numbers and at the end we calculated the result also. So subprocess calculate the result which got returned to the main process. So this is how we can implement subprocess in BW6.X. This was Sam J. See you in the next video. Thank you.